let's proceed, or let's continue our discussion for lesson 3, which is chirality. So we've already done discussing lesson 1, introduction to biochemistry, and lesson 2, classification of carbohydrates. So let's continuing it by knowing what is chirality, or what is the process called chirality. As we read in the title, chirality is particularly in the handedness of molecules. So for further explanation, let's know what is chirality. So chirality is the term, comes from the term chiral, from Greek word care, which means hand. Chiral objects are said to possess handedness, an important property of many molecules, including most carbohydrates, which is a form of isomerism. Molecules possess handedness, which exists in two forms: left-handed form and a right-handed form. So, meaning to say, when we say handedness in a chiral objects, all of the possible description that has a chemical formula and its structure, it's actually referring to handedness. And for this statement that handedness or chirality is or there is something to do with isomerism in chirality, we will be discussing that one in the topic, which is isomerism. So let's focus now to another description. It said that it is possesses or exists in two forms, which is left-handed and right-handed. So basically, chirality is very important concept. Why? Because cells are mostly cells. Our cells inside our body is mostly composed of chiral molecules. So examples of chiral molecules that inside our body are carbohydrates. But not only carbohydrates, we can also chiral molecules also can be found in amino acid, sugars, like I've said, sugars like carbohydrates, building blocks of protein, which is amino acid, and of course nucleic acid. All of that three macromolecules, or three biomolecules, possesses chirality. So that is the meaning of chirality. So now let's move forward to another slide. It said also that your left-handed and right-handed, or the two forms of your hand, are related to each other in the same way that a pair of hands are related to each other. That's why chirality is compared to your left hand and right hand, because your left hand and your right hand is related to each other, and that relationship is called a mirror image. The concept of a mirror image is the key to understanding molecular handedness. All objects, including all molecules, have a mirror image. And let's define what is mirror image. A mirror image is the reflection of an object in a mirror. So basically, it explains that mirror image can be or mirror image is compared to your left hand and right hand. Kasi basically, if you kung titingnan mo yung left hand mo to your right hand, it's actually like an identical, right? Pareha lang, it the same with the mirror. If you look to a mirror, like your face, kung ano yung nakikita mo kung ano yung nakikita mo sa panglabas mo at pagtingin mo sa mirror, parehas lang. So that is why chirality is there is something to do, or there are a connection between chirality and a mirror image. So it explains now with the division of it. So the object can be divided into two classes on the basis of their mirror image. We have superimposable mirror image and non-superimposable mirror image. Let's discuss first what is superimposable mirror image. Superimposable mirror image are the image that coincide at all points when the images are laid upon each other. Example, a dinner plate with no design feature has superimposable mirror image. Diba tama naman? Kasi once you look in an object that is without a feature or without a design, you are now looking with a superimposable. When we say superimposable, the image of the original is the same to the image. So, meaning, kagaya na sinabi ko, the image of the original is the same with the image, even though na pabaliktad-baliktarin mo siya. Yan yung superimposable mirror image. Even though nakatalikod, nakaharap, nakagilid, pareha pa rin yung makikita mo. That is superimposable mirror image. It is very in contrast to non-superimposable mirror image. Why? Because these are the images that does not or where not all points coincide when the images are laid upon each other. So meaning human hand are non-superimposable mirror image. Why? Because human hand is opposite. Pero nga yung sinabi ko kanina, one of the example or in general, one of the example of mirror image is your hand. So basically your human hand is in the non-superimposable mirror image kasi bakit? Opposite siya. So, kung i-compare mo sa superimposable, like for example, yung plate that has no design, even man daw italikod mo yun, iharap mo yun, igilid mo yun, pareha pa rin. Kung ano yung nakikita mo in the original, yun pa rin yung nakikita mo. Unlike in your hand, opposite, you have left hand and you also have right hand. So that is why it's not superimposable mirror image. So we can discuss it further by this illustration. So as you can see, as I've said, left hand and right hand cannot be superimposed or not superimposable image. Kasi bakit? Kapag pagdikitin mo yung dalawang kamay mo, hindi naman magkapareha sila, right? Kasi it is opposite to each other. Comparing to the Erlenmeyer flash that you can see here, that if the Erlenmeyer flash will combine, or yung dalawang Erlenmeyer flash ipagdikit mo, it can be superimposed or it is superimposable image. Kasi bakit nga? Pareha lang. The same design, the same feature. Unlike to your hand, human hand, it is not the same feature because it is opposite to each other. The angle of your hand is different. Okay, so that was the literally the meaning of superimposable image and non-superimposable image. So if you have a question, you can leave that in your GC. So next, as you can see in this formula, instructional formula also, you can see also the superimpose, cannot be superimposed, and can be superimposed. When we say cannot be superimposed, ito yung non-superimposable image. When we say can be superimposed, ito siya yung mga superimposable image. So let's focus on the structural formula of bromochlorofluoromethane. Okay, for bromochlorofluoromethane, as you can see, na if the structural formula is in the mirror, 'di ba? Babaliktad yung formula. If the reflection of the formula in the mirror is the same, right? But if you turn it or rotate it in 180-degree rotation, makikita mo that the formula is not the same. So that means it cannot be superimposed or it is included in non-superimposable image. Unlike to dichlorofluoromethane, if iharap mo yung structural formula sa mirror, it the same pa rin. But if you rotate it in 180-degree, it is also can be imposed kasi it is the same pa rin. As I've said, because as you can see in the formula of dichlorofluoromethane, it has the same with the single bond, with the bonded. There are two chlorine here. So basically, even though if you 180-degree rotation, the same pa rin yan ang makikita mo. Unlike to bromochlorofluoromethane, it is different. Why? Because the bonded of each structure is not the same. It has one chlorine, one bromine, and one fluorine. So that is why it is not the same if you rotate it in 180 rotation. So I hope you understand now what is the meaning of superimposable. The images that can be actually there is no changes, but non-superimposable, these are the images that is changed if you rotate it to literally a degree or 180-degree. If you rotate it or pagbalik-baliktarin mo siya, may changes o may kaibahan sa image mo that is not non-superimposable image. So let's proceed to another slide. So what determines whether or not a molecules possess handedness? So ano nga ba, or how can we determine it? By or for organic and bioorganic compounds, the structural requirement for handedness is the presence of a carbon atom that has 4 different groups of bonded to it in a tetrahedral orientation. So meaning to say that a compound has a presence of chiral or a compound has a chirality if or has unhandedness, or one of the requirements for handedness is the presence of carbon. So from the presence of carbon atom combining or combination for 4 different groups of bonded of tetrahedral orientation, what are those? We have 4 elements. We have bromine, hydrogen, iodine, and chlorine. And with the single bond, it possesses a handedness. Again, the requirements for handedness is the presence of carbon atom in accordance or that is actually connected to the different groups of bonded of tetrahedral orientation, or the four elements that bonded in the carbon, which is bromine, hydrogen, chlorine, and iodine. That all of that 4 is actually bonded to a carbon by a single bond only. So by that, it shows a handedness. So next slide. So any molecule that contains a carbon atom with 4 different groups bonded to it in a tetrahedral orientation possesses handedness. Kaya nga sinabi ko kanina that the requirements of handedness is, of course, if the structural formula has a carbon and the structural formula is connected, and the structural formula of the carbon is connected to the 4 different tetrahedral orientation, or the bromine, hydrogen, chlorine, and iodine. So meaning to say that structural formula possesses a handedness. And of course, if you can see also that the bond that connected to the carbon and the tetrahedral orientation is single bond, it is possesses as a handedness. Okay, so the handedness generating carbon is called chiral center. So as you can see in the illustration here below, that the carbon is the center. So what is the name of the carbon in the center of tetrahedral orientation? The name of it is chiral center, or the function of this carbon is generating handedness. So generating handedness carbon is called chiral center, and a chiral center is an atom in molecules that has 4 different groups combined to it in a tetrahedral orientation. As I've said, handedness or the chiral center can be found in the center of the tetrahedral orientation, or in the center of 4 elements in the tetrahedral orientation. So always remember. So this illustration below is a best example for handedness, or for the chiral center. So this is the best example. So next slide. A molecule that contains chiral center is said to be chiral, yes. And a chiral molecule is molecule whose mirror images are not superimposable. Chiral molecules have handedness. Chiral equals to non-superimposable mirror image. So meaning to say, all of the chemical formula or structural formula that is non-superimposable mirror image is an chiral or chiral molecule. So yan lang. So always remember that that chiral molecule does not possesses, or this molecule is a mirror image does not superimposable or not superimposable. So always remember what is chiral molecule, okay? So now, if you have question clarification, you can leave that in our GC. So let's move forward to the next slide. A chiral molecule is a molecule whose mirror image are superimposable. So it is contradict to the other, to chiral, because chiral, again, for the chiral molecule, it is a molecule whose possesses non-superimposable images, while a chiral molecule is a molecule whose mirror images are superimposable. A chiral molecule do not have handedness. A chiral superimposable mirror image So meaning a chiral molecule is pertaining to superimposable mirror image. What does it mean why a chiral molecule do not have handedness? Kasi sabi ko nga, superimposable images are those images that does not change. Meaning to say, kung ano yung original na image niya, yun pa rin. Like for example, if you get a Erlenmeyer flask, if you get a beaker, kahit pabaliktad-baliktad, or even a plate, a thing that has a no design, meaning to say, it is superimposable. Comparing it to non-superimposable, kasi one of the best example of non-superimposable is your hand. So meaning to say, agad-agad na ang example or the non-superimposable ay kasali na siya ang handedness. Kasi bakit? One of the example of it is your hand. Comparing it to superimposable, hindi. Kasi sabi ko nga, do not have handedness kasi sabi ko nga, the superimposable is in original image pa rin. Kahit baliktarin mo pa siya, even though you flip it into, or even though you rotate it into 180, 360 degree, it will be the same image from the original image. So yan. So meaning to say, all of the superimposable mirror image, it has contained of a chiral molecule. Okay? If you have question clarification, you can leave that in our GC. So let's move forward to our next slide. So for the next slide, for the explanation in illustration, as you can see in my illustration, we have both structural formula, right? So as you can see in the structural formula, in a chiral molecule mirror image, walang nagbago, right? Even though each compound and each single bonds walang nagbago. Kahit if you show it to the mirror plane, there is no changes. While chiral mirror images are non-superimposable kasi makikita mo na may nagbago, right? Okay. As I've said, for chiral molecule, it is superimposable kasi nga may kaibahan. As you can see in the compound in the terminal or in the bottom of the structure, we have CH2. In the original structural formula, we have CH2, CH3. Comparing it to the mirror plane, yung pinarap mo na siya sa mirror, bumaliktad, if dapat 2 ang mauna, it land to be 3. So as I've said, in non-superimposable image, umiiba talaga yung imahe ng isang structure kapag nasa superimposable. So from its illustration, you can definitely again know what is a chiral molecule or the superimposable image and what is chiral molecule or the non-superimposable image. So I hope you understand what is the differences between a chiral molecule and chiral molecule. So let's proceed to another slide. So again, another examples of a chiral and a chiral molecule. We have chiral has 4 different atoms bonded to the carbon. As you can see, sabi ko nga, different atoms. And a chiral does not have 4 different atoms or group bonded to the carbon to hydrogen. Chiral has 4 different groups bonded to the carbon, and a chiral only has 3 atoms bonded to the carbon. So meaning to say, with the illustration, this illustration shows if the structure is a chiral or a chiral. So let's discuss it one by one. For the first structure, it is said that it's chiral because it has 4 different atoms bonded to the carbon. As you can see, CH3 would be includes as one carbon atom. So from CH3 1, hydrogen 1. 2 na yon. From chlorine 3, chlorine, which is 3 atom na, and bromine 4. So meaning to say, you have 4 different atoms, so it includes in chiral. Comparing it to the next structure, as you can see, if a certain element is the same to another bond that being connected, meaning to say, tatlo lang yung atom na meron ka. So sabi ko nga, CH3 bilang na to bilang isa. So CH3 1, hydrogen 2, then the hydrogen connected to the next is another hydrogen, meaning to say bilang na rin yan siya na isa. So in this structure, ilan ang magiging atom? Tatlo na lang, CH3, hydrogen, and bromine. Kasi bakit nga inulit yung element na meron? So kapag may inulit na element na meron, meaning to say tatlo lang yung nabigay na atom. So if you cannot meet to the 4 different atoms, you are included to a chiral, or the structural formula is included to a chiral. So compare again to this another structure. As you can see, it produces 4 different groups from CH3 hydrogen to CH2 CH3 and to CH2 CH2 CH3. So from that, it produces 4 different atom group banded to the carbon. It also explains another achiral in this structure. Why? Because you will not include the double bond oxygen. Kasi nga, sinasabi natin, uulitin natin, that chiral molecule, or let's say this one, itong sinabi dito, that carbon atom, or you can have a handedness if you will require the presence of carbon atom with a single bond. If may representation na siya na double bond in the structure, meaning to say it is not a chiral, or it is a chiral only. So you can count now the number of atom in below of the structural formulas. We can see here that the hydrogen is connected to the carbon and the CH3 is connected also to the carbon. So it explains the achiral. Why? Because it does not meet the requirements of chiral, which is 4 different group of atom. Tatlo lang siya, so it includes in a chiral molecule or a chiral structure. Okay, I hope you understand what is the differences between the structural formula. So let's proceed to another slide. So guidelines for identifying chiral center. Okay. So number 1, a carbon atom involved in a multiple band, double or triple band, cannot be chiral center. Yun na nga, sinasabi ko that one of the requirements of a chiral center should be that the carbon is in the center, that connected to 4 different carbon atom in a tetrahedral orientation with a single bond. So meaning to say, if there is a double, triple bond, it is not a chiral center, or it is not includes in chiral molecule. So since it has a fewer than 4 groups bonded to it to have 4 groups present, all bonds about the chiral center must be single bonds. Again, chiral, or one of the requirements of chiral center is a single bond. Okay, for number 2, a carbon atom that has 2 like groups bonded to it cannot be a chiral center, since it does not meet the requirement of 4 different groups. Kaya nga, yun nga sinasabi ko, that I really literally explained to you guys that the requirements of chiral center has a single bond. If it has a double or 4 triple bond, hindi siya kasali sa chiral center. Okay, moving forward. Number 3, carbon atoms in a ring system, if not involved in a multiple bond, can be chiral center. So in a ring, in a cyclic structural formula, kapag hindi naman siya involved with a double and triple bond, you can include that in a chiral center. Note everyone, meaning to say, you have to remember this one. Remember the meaning of the structural notation like CHO and CH2OH. So meaning CHO means, so meaning to say, CHO, oxygen is actually bonded to a carbon, and a carbon bonded to a nitrogen. It is very contrast to CH2OH, because literally the carbon is now double bonded to a hydroxyl group. So that is the difference. So take note the difference between CHO and CH2OH. Okay, guys? So let's move forward to another slide. So indicate whether the circle carbon atom in each of the following molecules is chiral or no chiral center. So now, let's try this. Let's try to answer this one. So from number 1 to 2, let's answer first number 1. Of course, as you can see, as I've said, chiral center or the structural formula has a chiral center if it is all single band. As you can see, it is a chiral center or the number 1 structural formula is a chiral center. Bakit? Meron siyang single bond, and aside from that, there are 4 different group attached to the carbon. What are those? CH3, chlorine, CH2, CH3, and hydrogen. So yan na nga yung sinasabi ko that if the chiral center or if the structural formula has a single bond attached to the 4 different atom carbon, meaning to say it has a chiral center. So let's also answer for number 2. For number 2 naman, it has no chiral center kasi it's very understandable. Pagtingin mo pa lang sa structure, alam mo na agad that no chiral center. Bakit? Ano nga yung hindi kailangan sa chiral center? Double bond. So in this structural formula, no chiral center is present because the carbon atom is attached to only 3 groups. Aside from that, it involves double bond. Kaya nga sinasabi ko na chiral center would always be a single bond. Pag ang structural formula mo has a double bond, hindi na siya or it has no chiral center. So, I hope you understand that one. If not, you can leave a question in our GC. So, let's move forward again. So, again, by this one, let's try to answer also number 3. So, from looking at the illustration or from looking at that structural formula, you can eventually answer that this formula is a no chiral center. Why? Because there are 2 of the group attached to the carbon atoms are identical. Tama, may dalawang identical dito. Ano yon? The CH2 and the CH3. As I've said, chiral center can be or structural formula can be a chiral center or possess a chiral center if it is attached to 4 different carbon atom. Pag hindi siya naka-attach ng 4 different carbon atom, even naka-single bond pa rin siya, it is not include to chiral center. That is why this number 3 is involved to no chiral center. Kasi as you can see, tama, single bond, the carbon is in the center, but the 2 different atom ay inulit. Pareho lang, so meaning to say, hindi siya 4, kundi 2 carbon atom lang ang meron na represent sa number 3. Okay, let's move forward. So, the importance of chirality. So, I hope guys you've already understand how to look in a certain structural formula if it is chiral center or no chiral center. Okay? So, always remember that chiral center possesses single bond and 4 that attach in 4 different atom. If the structural formula has double bond, triple bond, and if it is attached to 2 or 1 carbon atom, hindi siya chiral, and even though na yung structural formula is single pero naka-attach sa kanya ay 2 or 3 lang na carbon atom, hindi pa rin siya magiging chiral. Okay? So I hope you understand now. So let's move forward. Let's know the importance of chirality. So what is the importance of chirality of the handedness that is now under discussion? So number 1, in human body chemistry, right-handed and left-handed forms of molecule of 10 elicit different responses within the body. So meaning to say that in human body, chirality is very important for the balance purpose. So inside your body, one of the examples, bilateral level, we already discussed that one in human anatomy. So in bilateral level, you can it can be shown the chirality concept. So, yun na nga, as I've said, in human body, chirality is very important because of the balancing purposes. Or one of the example of it is the bilateral level that shows the chirality content or concept. Okay, let's move forward to another importance. Monosaccharide, the simplest type of carbohydrates and building block for more complex types of carbohydrates, are almost always right-handed. That is why I've said that chirality is very important in our body because of for the balance purpose. So in the second statement, it said that most of the carbohydrates is in the right handed of our body, inside our body. Kasi nga it's according to the research, it said that monosaccharide, or all the carbohydrates that we will be eating or eaten, or we will be or even the carbohydrates inside our body is in the right handed level. Okay. So always remember that one, that all of your carbohydrates or even the sugar that you are being taking is in your right-handed level inside your body. Okay? Next slide. It said also the importance of chirality is a particularly important concept in biology because yun na nga sinabi ko kanina, because cells are mostly composed of chiral molecules. That is why it's very important that chirality, or the importance of chirality inside your body. Why? Because it is part of your cells, and of course, what are those small chirality inside our body, or small chiral molecules inside our body? We have amino acid, sugars, nucleic acid, or even proteins. Nasa chiral, or isa siyang chiral molecule. So that is why it's very important. Another statement, small chiral molecules such as amino acid and sugars are the building blocks of larger molecules such as proteins and nucleic acid, which are also chiral. Yun na nga yung in-explain ko kanina, that chirality is very important because cells are mostly composed of chiral molecules. At what are those chiral molecules? We have amino acid, sugars, proteins, even proteins, and nucleic acid is also chiral. Okay? Then, it said also that a chiral molecule and its mirror image are called in enantiomers. In enantiomers, one is the dextrorotatory, and the other one is levorotatory. Okay. Also, this means it is the answer of my question in my last lesson, which is what is the purpose of D in a certain compound? Because, meaning to say, that compound includes or has a chiral molecule. So, D stands for dextrorotatory, and if it is L attached to a compound, it is called as a levorotatory. Okay, always remember that one. Take note with that. So, lastly, the importance of chirality is ordinary chemical reaction produce L and D molecules in equal amounts, referred to as a racemic mixture. Kaya nga yung kanina, yung the lesson 2, the last topic of my lesson 2 is a question, right? That what is the purpose of D, of having D in a certain compound? Meaning to say, that compound or that structural formula has a chiral molecule. And the chiral molecule is that represented in that formula is the dextrorotatory. So dextrorotatory, or D, that can be attached to a certain compound or structural formula. And if it is letter L, it is called as levorotatory. So always remember, take note with that terminology. So that would be all for the lesson 3. So we already done discussing lesson 1, 2, and 3. So I hope that you've already understand. If you already understand, and of course, if not, just ask a question to me. You can ask it in our GC, or even in or you can PM me directly. Okay? So for our next topic, research in advance, stereoisomerism and enantiomers and the stereomers. Okay, so research in advance lang pala yan for me to along the lesson that we have, kasi we will be having a virtual class na for the lesson 4. So for the lesson 4, along my discussion, I will be asking question for you to have an oral recitation. So research in advance this topic. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. So let's see each other via virtual class on lesson 4. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless.